Well, let us sit for meditation, not a guided meditation, but simply sitting together in silence for 20 minutes in order to collect ourselves.
Come on, honey.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Dear friends, today is our regular sutta study class, which happens to fall within Vesak week. That is the week when we remember the birth, the full enlightenment, and the Parinibbana, or the last days of the Buddha. I have had a lot in my mind recently about the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. And I propose to speak about the first section of this sutta today. And then subsequently, we may go on and on with this sutta for a few more weeks, since it's a very long, substantial sutta. This is number 16 in the long discourses of the Buddha. It's the sutta where the Blessed One had the knowledge that his own death was coming. It was the Buddha's 1 year to live. And teachings both have a kind of a poignancy and a special emphasis, because the Buddha was concerned about the success and survival of the Sangha in the centuries and period of time to come. The only way that the teachings of the Buddha, the way to awakening, would be able to be carried down through the generations is if the Sangha of practitioners who have realized something is able to be successful and able to survive and not be destroyed by the tides of history. This first part of today's class is being both recorded and broadcast live on YouTube. I would like to welcome anybody who has a question as we go along during the first part of the discussion to type your question into the chat, and then I will try to pick up and respond to those questions that come into the chat during my talk. Then in the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes of today's class, I'm going to turn off the recording and turn off the YouTube, and then we can have an open discussion, which can be more spontaneous and fun because it's not going to be broadcast. Okay. The Mahaparinibbana Sutta is very unique among all of the suttas that come down in the earliest texts. It's quite different in its content, different in its form. For one thing, it's 60 pages long, so it's a very long sutta. It's by far the longest sutta in all of the books. Even when the Buddha was giving a very extended teaching, giving a Dhamma theme and then developing many different aspects in detail, it's unique in its length. It's somewhat unique in that this sutta is not the word of the Buddha. The voice that you hear is the voice of the Sangha who remembered and is telling about what they heard from the Buddha and telling the surrounding history. So this sutta is much more kind of got a narrative historical format describing the different things that happened during the last year of the Buddha's life, and also going after the Buddha's passing away and the subsequent events that happened after that. And it's for that reason that we know that it's not Buddha Vajana, because the Buddha had stopped speaking by the end of this particular sutta. In some of the other traditions that are parallel to the Pali tradition, this Mahaparinibbana does not appear in any of the books of the discourses, the Sutta Pitaka. Instead, this discourse appears in the Vinaya. And in a way that's very fitting. The Vinaya is the section that lays out the precepts or the guidelines for the behavior of the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. But the Vinaya also has a lot of narrative historical material saying what happened at the first council, what happened at the second council, what was the circumstance that caused some kind of a problem that the Buddha needed to lay down a particular rule. And then what were the things that happened subsequently that caused the Buddha to make modifications or clarifications of a particular rule. So the Vinaya is a very rich resource for getting a wider perspective, like the story, the biography of the early Sangha and the personalities of the different bhikkhus and bhikkhunis and the prominent lay supporters that they encountered during that early period. I'm hoping today to come to a particular section which is near the beginning of the sutta, where the Buddha lays out 7 factors for the non-decline of the Sangha. And when the Buddha mentioned these factors, he said, it's very important. Pay attention, listen. And he does not frequently frame his teaching with so much emphasis. And so because it was given to us as being something very important, therefore I would like to also emphasize it to you and invite us to really reflect and consider this set with the importance it has. In the sutta, as it goes on, I'm not sure quite how long I'll go, but after the first set of 7 factors, then he gives 7 more factors, then he gives us 7 more factors, then he gives 7 more factors. And so you get various different sets of 7 factors that the Buddha was recommending for the non-decline of the Sangha. It seems like it's possible that the Bhanikas, or the monks who were compiling and memorizing the sutta, might have added on some of the additional information. Sometimes this happens. It's like a very important sutta is like a good neighborhood. And if a neighborhood in your town or city is very posh and really popular, or the next neighborhood over also would like to be popular, and so they become part of the famous neighborhood. And so then the famous neighborhood sort of expands and takes on some other sections. And the same way, we think that some of these other teachings got added in to make it comprehensive and encyclopedic, and to give more prominence and fame to these subsequent sets of factors. The reason why we question whether all of them are original is that we don't have the same exact sets in all of the different versions. So if you look at the Chinese language or the Sanskrit language, or the different versions of the sutta that were redacted at different times in history, they're not all identical, but the first 7 sets that I hope to get to is something that appears in all the versions. When something appears in a teaching of the Buddha, which is identical in all the different versions that we can find of that particular sutta, the scholars believe that that's an indication that this is an authentic teaching, something that we can rely on as actually being an early teaching or an earliest statement of the Buddha's teaching. So having given that preamble, I'll share the screen and you can read along with me. Okay. Try again. Stop share. Share screen. Here we are. I'm using Bhante Sujato's translation, the Great Discourse on the Buddha's Extinguishment. So I've heard at one time the Buddha was staying near Rajagaha on the Vulture's Peak Mountain. Now at that time, King Ajasattu Vedehiputta, that means the son of Vedehi, of Magadha, wanted to invade the Vajis. He declared, "I shall wipe out these Vajis, so mighty and powerful. I shall destroy them and lay ruin and devastation upon them." Then King Ajatasattu addressed Vasakara, the Brahmin minister of Magadha. "Please, Brahmin, go to the Buddha in my name, bow with your head to his feet, ask him if he is healthy and well, nimble, strong, and living comfortably, and then say, 'Sir, King Ajatasattu Vedehiputta of Magadha wants to invade the Vajis. He says, I shall wipe out these Vajis, so mighty and powerful. I shall destroy them and lay ruin and devastation upon them.' Remember well how the Buddha answers and tell it to me, for realized ones say nothing that is not so." Well, this is ugly, isn't it? The sutta is both a history and a mythology at the same time. The story about King Ajatasattu is in a way a setup of the advice he gives about secular politics, has got a parallel to the teaching he gives about the community of practitioners. And so in that way, you could even wonder, could it even be possible that a king who is so wicked that he wants to destroy his neighbor would be sending an ambassador to consult with the Buddha about it? How could they possibly expect the Buddha to give advice or counseling to them about their plans for a war? It seems almost incredible. But then at the same time, as a setup for the final year of the Buddha, we realize how much danger there is for the Sangha, because how much disaster, war, conflict might be surrounding us. how many events could happen that are trying to drag the Sangha of practitioners into conflict, into warfare, into really bad politics. And so, in a certain way, at least to my heart, it emphasizes the fact that this story was selected and told in this sutta of all suttas, is setting up the urgency for the Buddha to teach what we have to know in order for Buddhism to survive. So then the Brahmin, Vasakara, said yes. This is a very typical. He had his fine carriages harnessed. He mounted a fine carriage, and with other fine carriages went out from Rajagaha, where he was living, for the Vulture's Peak mountain, where the Buddha was staying. Rajgir in modern India is surrounded by 5 mountains or 5 hills, which are all very famous in the early suttas. You can still go to Vulture's Peak, and even among all of the pilgrimage sites, this is one of the least spoiled of all the sites. It's less crowded with tourists, and is more a kind of a place that you can sit in a cave, be up high over the city, and practice meditation and come into touch with like how real it is. This is a real place, a real cave on top of a real mountain or a real hill. And Gautama Buddha and his disciples sat in this very cave. With our own body, we couldn't touch the place where the Buddha sat. Vasakara went as far as the terrain allowed him to go by carriage. Then he descended and approached on foot and exchanged greetings with him. And so we can see from this and from many other teachings that the park, or the place where the Sangha was settling in the forest, was secluded. They didn't provide a carriage road where somebody could ride in on their carriage. They had to go by foot. I've often wondered, well, sometimes at our hermitage, we don't allow the cars to go all the way in. They have to park at the parking pull-out and hike a certain distance in order to come to us. And so that's just an idea of the seclusion that they maintained. There were greetings and polite conversation. Again, this is very normal. And then the ambassador repeated the courteous greetings and a statement about wiping out the enemy. At that time, there were, during the Buddha's lifetime, there were many kingdoms, they call them kingdoms, many very small governments that were called kingdoms, but they were not unifying all of India. So Magadha was approximately smaller than Thailand. We see in the subsequent 100 years that there was a big consolidation of the more powerful kingdoms gobbling up the smaller ones until the kingdom of Chandragupta, which was the kingdom that was encountered by Alexander the Great and then is sort of confirmed in history because of the interaction between Indian history and Greek history. That at that time there had been a lot of consolidation, and a very vast section of northern India had been unified under one state. But at this time, the kingdoms were very small, almost more like the headman of a town or something like that. And maybe they had 10,000 people. I can give you an example. This is in the Vinaya. King Ajatasattu went to bathe in the hot spring, but the bhikkhus were already there before him and they were bathing, and so then he had to wait. And he became annoyed and complained to the Buddha about that, and therefore the Buddha made a rule limiting the amount of time that the Sangha could spend enjoying themselves by bathing in the river. And so this king, the kingdom is so tiny that the king doesn't even have a private place to bathe. He's bathing in the public river. There's another story where the king invites a bhikkhu to take the wood from the lumber yard of the king in order to build a kuti. And the monk goes to the lumber yard and says, the king invited me to take all the wood. And he takes all of the wood, he takes the entire store of wood of the entire kingdom and uses the entire store of wood to build one kuti. So you can see it must have been a pretty small lumber yard. So things were small, and yet these rulers with their armies could be maybe halfway between a regular government and a gang of criminals, in the sense that they could be so thuggish and they could kill anybody or take what they wanted. They could steal what they wanted from the people. They could raid other kingdoms. They could do all this thuggish behavior. So now the minister is going to see what the Buddha says when he makes this declaration about the upcoming war. At that time, Ananda was standing behind the Buddha, fanning him. The Buddha said to him, Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis meet frequently and have many meetings? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis meet frequently and have many meetings, they can expect growth, not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis meet in harmony, leave in harmony, and carry on their business in harmony? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis meet in harmony, leave in harmony, and carry on their business in harmony, they can expect growth, not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but proceed having undertaken the traditional Vajjian principles as they have been decreed? I've heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but proceed having undertaken the traditional Vajjian principles as they have been decreed, they can expect growth and not decline. I'm not elaborating on these in the political case because I'm going to elaborate them when they come up in parallel in the teaching for the Sangha of practitioners. The Buddha asks, have you heard that the Vajis honor, respect, esteem, and venerate Vajjian elders and think them worth listening to? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis honor, respect, esteem, and venerate Vajjian elders and think them worth listening to, they can expect growth, not decline. Ananda, have you heard that the Vajis don't rape or abduct women or girls from their families and force them to live with them? I have heard that, sir. As long as the Vajis don't rape or abduct women or girls from their families and force them to live with them, they can expect growth and not decline. Some readers might find it to be unbelievable that a politician would ask a monk to bless his plans for war. And yet, in modern times, you would see that it does happen, and it happens regularly. Even in a Buddhist country, you have a situation of warfare, or even a situation of genocide, or driving out the Muslim people or the people who originally came from Bangladesh, driving them out of Myanmar. A case of a long civil war, which is conflict between different ethnic groups that happened in Sri Lanka, conflict with the communists that happened in Thailand, conflict that happened in Cambodia. So many countries, even all the Buddhist countries, have faced wars. It's sort of a, we say that Buddhist countries are less warlike than Western countries, but there have been wars, there have been rulers, and the rulers have sought the support or blessing of the Sangha for making warfare. And likewise, you could find it unbelievable to think that there could be a government or a country where the practice of rape and abduction was considered a normal thing. But if we look around, both through ancient history and even looking at modern history, we could see that there are some cultures where when armies are practicing warfare, part of the practice of warfare is the practice of systematic rape. And part of the practice of power is an idea that wealthy and powerful men expect to be able to molest girls and women. And so the Buddha is not just posing some imaginary danger that's not really a danger, because those things don't happen. Actually, those things do happen. And what he's saying is, when these things happen, it tears up a country. So when a country is not able to meet in harmony, when a country throws away their traditions, when a country disregards, and doesn't listen to their wise elders, and when a country approves of sexual misconduct, it tears up the country. The country can expect to decline. So the Buddha says, as long as the Vajis honor, respect, one more point, respecting religion. Have you heard that the Vajis honor, respect, esteem and venerate the Vajrayanas' shrines, whether inner or outer, not neglecting the proper spirit offerings that were given and made in the past. Yes, he says, as long as they honor, respect, esteem, and venerate the Vajrayan shrines, not neglecting them, they can expect growth and not decline. Have you heard that the Vajis organize proper protection, shelter, and security for arahants, for the ones worthy of respect, so that more perfected ones or more arahants may come to the realm, and those already there may live in comfort? I've heard that, sir. So as long as the arahants are respected, that contributes to the growth and non-decline of the country. At the end of this dialogue with Ananda, then the Buddha speaks to Vasakara. Brahmin, this one time I was staying near Vesali at the Sarandada Woodland Shrine. There I taught the Vajis these 7 principles that prevent decline. As long as these 7 principles that prevent decline last among the Vajis, and as long as the Vajis are seen following them, they can expect growth and not decline. What's the meaning here? The Buddha could be signifying it would not be profitable to invade the Vajis because they're observing these 7 factors. He could be implying perhaps if the Magadha people would also observe these 7 factors, then they could become successful in themselves, and they wouldn't have the necessity of invading the surrounding places. But we can see that the Brahmin takes it differently than that. Vasantara says, Master Gautama, if the Vajis follow even a single one of these principles, they can expect growth and not decline. How much more so all 7? King Ajatasattu cannot defeat the Vajis in war unless by diplomacy or sowing dissension. And in this case, he means negative diplomacy. He's not meaning the skillful practice of wise speech to resolve conflicts peacefully. Instead, he's referring to having a type of Cold War diplomacy that's striving to undermine another, but without yet entering into a hot war. Well, now, Master Gautama, I must go. I have many duties and much to do. Please, Brahman, go at your convenience. Then he goes. And what happens after this is that Vasakara goes to live among the Magadhan people, and he uses deception, false speech, malicious speech, and propaganda to encourage dissent and disharmony among the Magadha people, among the Vajrayan people, so that eventually the Vajrayan people begin to quarrel among themselves. And then when they start to quarrel, Vasakara, probably in his team of secret agents, continues to promote more and more quarrels, more and more disagreements, more and more disrespect, more and more violation of these principles among the people. until the Vajjian country becomes weak and vulnerable and able to be invaded. You could call this taking the wrong end of the snake. So the Buddha gave a Dhamma teaching, which could have been taken in a way that would be for the welfare, happiness, and improvement of the Magadhas and the Vajjayans both. But instead, this agent perverted the teaching of the Buddha by using it for worldly gain, by using it in a dishonest way for worldly gain. We know that a lot of the Buddha's teaching is a kind of a psychology. And we know that the tools of psychology can be used to exploit and take advantage of people. It's not only that psychology is always used to help people and to cure them of their troubles. But the Buddha mentioned in the Alagadupama Sutta, the simile of the snake, he mentioned that taking the Dhamma in the wrong way, perverting the Dhamma, will cause a bad repercussion for you. And then we have then a second major danger that would have confronted the Sangha of bhikkhus in the years and centuries following the Buddha's passing away. There would be this danger of people misunderstanding the teachings, taking the teachings in a wrong way, perverting the teachings, and then a question about, how can we practice in a way that the true teaching of the Dhamma is what survives, and that the false or perverted version of the Dhamma doesn't become dominant. Soon after he left the Buddha said to Ananda, "Go, Ananda, gather all the mendicants staying at the vicinity of Rajagaha, gathering together in the assembly hall." "Yes, sir," said Ananda, and he did that. And when they were all assembled, he went to the Buddha, bowed, stood to one side, and said, "Sir, the mendicant Sangha has assembled. Please, sir, go at your convenience." The Buddha went to the assembly hall where he sat on the seat spread out. He addressed the mendicants. "Mendicants, I will teach you these 7 principles that prevent decline. Listen, pay close attention. I will speak." And these are the principles. As long as the mendicants meet frequently and have many meetings, they can expect growth and not decline. So among the ordained Sangha, we have the requirement to meet twice a month at the new moon and the full moon. At those meetings, we have a chance to resolve and purify any conflicts or problems that have come up in the community. It's not just a subgroup or some fragment of the community that's meeting. The meeting is required for everybody to attend. Only in the unusual circumstance, somebody can give permission for the meeting to go ahead without them. For example, if they're ill, they can give a proxy vote to another member of the community and not attend it. But somebody is insane, they don't have to attend the meeting. But among all those who are sane, they all come together. They all do the ceremony of acknowledging any faults in order to purify and resolve any faults they have before the meeting begins. and then they have the discussion in harmony. You may consider in your own family, your own club, your own business, or your own town or city, or your own government, whether the people are able to meet in harmony, or if you have a spiritual a practice group, which is not just the ordained Sangha, but including lay people, you should consider, well, what shall we do to meet in harmony? To do our business in harmony, to live in harmony. If somebody doesn't associate with any other practitioners, if they hear about the Dhamma and read some books or listen to a teacher, and then they feel, I don't need to associate with anybody, I'll just go and sit in my own apartment or my own cave or something and be a hermit, or just practice on my own, it's possible that those persons' ideas could come to be distorted or misguided in some way. So if they meet regularly with others, that helps to bring about it's a powerful antidote to the hindrances that can arise, and a way of learning by associating with others who are also practicing well and have the same aspirations. This is in part the meaning of having a good friend as the first factor for the elimination of the hindrances. And then the second one, as long as the mendicants don't make new decrees or abolish existing decrees, but undertake and follow the training rules as they have been decreed, they can expect growth and not decline. In the case of the monastic Sangha, the collection of the rules and precepts that were given to the bhikkhus were memorized and recited shortly after the Buddha's parinibbana. And the Sangha was very mindful of this teaching about not abolishing something that has been decreed and laid down. During his lifetime, the Buddha said that the minor rules could be set aside, but when the monks met, they were not able to reach a full unity among themselves about which rules were major and which ones were minor. And so they decided to keep all of them. As things have evolved, especially in the Theravada, if you find a good Sangha, it will be a Sangha that has given deep consideration, deep respect, and made the effort not just to practice all of the rules and regulations in a literal way, but to understand the purpose of those rules and regulations in the context that they had in ancient times, and to carry forward the same kind of purpose. So, for example, we have a rule, it's against the Vinaya for a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni to defecate in a creek. And of course, that's like the danger of disease happening from such an unsanitary procedure. And we may extend the intention behind that rule to be sensitive about preserving our clean waterways and protecting nature and being cleanly in a way that we're not spreading disease. However, because of the changes in time and place, we now have flush toilets, and so we routinely defecate in water because we're using flush toilets, and nobody thinks that that's against the Vinaya. There are other rules that have evolved through the cultural history, the cultural evolution of the communities in different places in the world. And it's possible for there to be confusion about which ones are really the rules of the Buddha that should be observed, and which ones are some modification that's really cultural. Therefore, each individual community of monastics which is practicing together in consultation with each other comes to their own discernment about the meaning of the rules and how to hold them skillfully. It may be that a community in California or a community in Thailand could come to a different decision, which is related to the cultural effects on the ground. But nevertheless, all of us are still taking the decrees seriously, honoring and respecting, and fully following them to the best of our understanding, not throwing them away. So this is a characteristic of a spiritual community that's able to go on for a long time and not be destroyed and not fall into obscurity and not be wiped out. Next one is, as long as the mendicants honor, esteem, venerate the senior mendicants, those of long standing, long gone forth, the fathers and mothers and leaders of the Sangha, and think them worth listening to, they can expect growth and not decline. These two factors are somewhat balancing to each other. In having these harmonious meetings, the Buddhist Sangha was the original democracy where everybody had a voice, and consensus agreement had to be an agreement that was accepted by every member. So if one member has a conscientious objection to something, they could block something from happening. So if somebody is coming to be ordained and the motion to the ordination is done by a Sangha, the motion is made to do the ordination. If one person objects, even if there's 10 others who accept it, if one person objects, it stops. So in that way, it's very democratic, and even the smallest person has got a powerful voice, but then that's balanced off with this idea of respecting and appreciating our elders. At least somebody who's upheld this practice, who's kept their sila and kept the form for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, or 50 years, we know that with this gradual growth and fruition in the Dhamma, something does happen. And someone who discovered Buddhism in 2010 and took a course for 3 years and then got a certificate as a teacher, and then started teaching Dhamma courses or teaching meditation, and they've only been practicing for a few years, well, they have something. They've got the wisdom of somebody who's been practicing for a few years, which can be extremely helpful, especially for others. It can be very helpful in a way. But those who have practiced for longer periods of time, there is something that grows there. Then the next one. As long as the mendicants don't fall under the sway of a risen craving for future lives, they can expect growth and not decline. Again, this is a real danger for the Sangha. Why is it a danger for us especially? Well, for all of us. Many people in the world are not at the place where they think this could be their last birth. Many people in the world are not practicing in a way to obtain the deathless. Or if they are, they just don't conceive of it as something that would happen in one lifetime. Many people are practicing merits, practicing to develop the perfections, practicing with the vision that there will be many lifetimes left in which they will be continuing to practice. And people may often be practicing for a heavenly birth. And when we are around people like that, it's kind of a challenge to encourage meritorious practice and to respect somebody who wants to go to heaven and they're practicing for heaven and they get to go to heaven. Okay, good for them, but we don't recommend it, and we don't fall under the sway of that, and we don't ourselves lose hope in enlightenment and decide instead of practicing for enlightenment, we'll just practice for heaven. And then the next factor is, as long as mendicants take care to live in wilderness lodgings, meaning being in situations that are closer to nature, that are simple, that are humble, that have some seclusion from all of the commercial activities of the town. And then, as long as the mendicants individually establish mindfulness so that more good-hearted spiritual companions might come, and those that have already come may live comfortably. So this is mindfulness in the sense of both an aspect of our bhavana, of our meditation practice, to be having our being able to direct our awareness inwards to this body, to the form, feeling, state of mind, and to the dhammas that are arising within ourselves, and also being mindful externally, aware of the bodies, the feelings, the state of mind, and the dhammas that are arising within other people around us, and practicing in a way of not interfering and undermining because of that awareness and that sensitivity. And so those are the 7 principles. I'm going to turn off the recording and go to the view where I can see all of you. And I'd like to know whether any of these principles are things that you have used or things that you would like to do more of in your own practice.